work with contraction in real time, and especially the root of all contractions. Sort of like there's a mother of all bombs, there's a mother of all contractions, and that's the inherent feeling that we're a separate self. It has been illuminated in many different ways throughout all the wisdom traditions that the root of all suffering is the selfing mechanism that believes itself to be separate from the world and to kind of exist in the first place, um, in a world of form, separation, and with that comes danger, anxiety, survival. If something can be born, then that thing can die. And to know ourselves beyond as that which was never born, can never die, is the liberation that we seek through acquisition of material goods or substances, relationships. And that might sound simplistic, and in some aspect, it is. There's a lot more to the relative world that we live in. There's the whole um, realm of energy and trauma, and a lot of that can cause the somatic experience of contracting into a separate self as well. And yet, at the very root lies that very belief that I'm a separate self who needs healing, who needs release from my own imaginary prison that I've built around myself with more beliefs. So it's kind of like a house of cards, if you please. And at the very bottom, it's sort of like the Jenga tower, but in inverse, the one that you kind of want to collapse. So like we are playing the game not to, that would be a fun game to remove as many beliefs as possible without having the tower collapse. So how many beliefs are strictly necessary for the ego structure to remain in place? And I think that there is actually a good answer to that. I'm not sure how good of a entertainment or a game that would be because in fact there's only one. It's more like a tent with that middle pole in the middle. That's what keeps all of the other beliefs in place, and that central belief is that I'm separate. I am a separate self who needs to manage, who needs to understand what I'm saying right now, who needs to think what I'm saying right now, and for you on the other hand, trying to understand what I'm saying, trying to apply it. And so see if you can rest in the knowing that is beyond that belief. See if you can find a foothold where there is no foothold. No foothold is necessary. You don't have to understand, you don't have to follow, you don't have to get anywhere with this. There's nowhere to get. As frustrating as that might sound, and I know this very well, listening to teachers who point to this, and of course it activates. So even this becomes grace because it activates the places in us that get frustrated, which is like this beautiful pointer to precisely those spots where those beliefs are held. And as we manage to release these beliefs slowly, gradually, for some of us, like, Eckhart Tolle and Ramana Maharashi, it can happen in an instant. But for the majority of us, it happens gradually, day by day, year by year, even. And there's a deeper sinking into that freedom, the vastness, the transparency of things. And at the same time, not to make this seem like a infinite, endless, unsurmountable path, this unsurmountable mountain of enlightenment that can only happen after many lifetimes. It's not like that at all. This recognition is available to all of us now. And then in the relative sense, there might be a stabilization that's happening where we learn to not get as easily dethroned from our throne, sort of using Christian terms, throne of our kingdom, kingdom of our Father, our kingdom, it's all the same. Father and Son are one. You are the Father and you are the Son. And this is your kingdom. And you can learn to stay and abide in that place which knows itself as that. And in my experience, for quite some time, there's still that conditioned groove of falling back into the identification with being a separate self. And that might provoke some parts, like spiritual achiever parts, to get frustrated with the process, with God, with reality, with nature, with our nature, with the nature of things. And that's all part of the course. And I'm sitting here talking to you, smiling now, but God knows just how much frustration I've gone through and still going through occasionally when I lose myself and I forget. And that seems to be, at least this part of the path is just reminding myself that this too belongs. And, again, suffering becomes grace because it is pointing me in those moments of recognition, of remembering. I That contraction is like the wake-up call to recognize that I have taken myself to be something that I'm not. And from there, it's a very simple, almost deceptively simple process of disidentifying, letting go of the identification with thought, with the person, essentially with the whole belief system, at which core there's really this one central belief, which is that I am separate. I am this. At some point, I am separate is seen through, and at some point, even the I am begins to kind of flicker in and out of existence or experience. There's no need for even the I am. There is just isness, suchness, life, everything appearing in constant flux, blipping in and out of existence. And with the changing weather, which is not me, it is and it's not. You see what I mean? Like from that non-dual lens, the weather is me, but it's also not me. There is no I. There's no I at all. Weather is, and I'm not separate from it, but I'm also not it. And as the weather fluctuates, I might get cold, I might get warm, I might get wet, but as long as I abide in the metaphorical house, inside of my kingdom, none of that really touches me. It's sort of like sitting in my home looking out the window at what currently is a rainy weather here in the north of Spain. But it's not really touching me. I'm experiencing it. And perhaps, this is how far we can push this metaphor because it's not about experiencing things through a thick pane of glass, through a window. Um, if anything, we can use that metaphor to point to a pitfall where we can transcend, we can touch that place after an initial awakening, and we can try to abide from that place of disidentifying from the separate self, but to the point of a spiritual bypass, of disidentifying and withdrawing, pulling away from all of the human experience, which is not what ultimately this path is about. It's about a deeper intimacy with everything that's human. And as that acceptance opens up to really allowing everything that's here to be here, not as a means of getting somewhere, because that is, again, the belief that I am separate self on the way somewhere. I'm an en route. I'm on the way. And what stands in my way is this pesky energy and this contraction and this life circumstance and this and that. And if only, then I know happiness is just around the corner. And it's not really like that. What collapses in deep inquiry is even the sense of time. There is no tomorrow. There is no There is no being saved beyond what's appearing here now. What's more, even more liberating, is that there is no one that needs saving. There is simply this present moment in all of its beauty with all of its parts. And as that relaxes into being just a space from which everything effortlessly appears, including the sense of being a human, including this life, then there is a relaxation happening, which allows that to flow more fluidly. And of course, the paradox is that at that point, we don't need anything to flow more fluidly because that discernment, that evaluation mechanism is part of the selfing, is part of the seeking. And at that point, when we don't need things to be different, that there is no need for more flow, and yet more flow appears. And with that acceptance, we recognize as the love comes in, we open up. This is, it gets tricky with language, but in the absence of the obstructions to our light, sort of like the clouds in the sky, in the absence of the clouds, we recognize our inherent bright light that loves all with no condition, no discernment. It's not discriminate. It loves all. It loves everything because it knows itself to be everything. How could it not love itself? Everything is it. And as we learn to tap into that, as this begins to opens up, not to imply that there is somebody here that is learning anything, that this is already our nature. It's like, does the wind need to learn how to be the wind? Does the sun need to learn how to abide as the sun? It just is. It is already. And yet, we humans, we have those obscurations that make us forget. So if anything, perhaps you could say we're remembering, we're relearning, but it's not really learning anything new, it's just remembering. Or to add a little bit more nuance and specificity, it's removing the obscurations to that which we already know. And we all know these moments when spontaneously, not even in deep inquiry, it could be over dinner with good friends, having a authentic belly laugh, and we touch that light, which loves all, which knows that everything is okay. There is nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with the world. And from that place of allowing, from accepting, from loving, everything becomes less contracted, less heavy, less burdensome. And as we make that switch, or that switch happens into a boundless sense of awareness, and even that which is beyond the label of awareness, then even the contractions are just seen as pattern of the weather, inconsequential and not really needing to be different. It's not about ignoring them, because again, that there's that pitfall of bypassing and saying, well, if I'm not any of this, then I can just behave in any way I want. I don't have to pay attention to these contractions. And it's not quite that. Again, this is about becoming more intimate with everything that's arising and loving everything more intimately, but without the sense of needing to. It's just natural. It's sort of like if you believed that it is your job and duty to breathe, imagine how many breaths you take during a day and how amazingly effortful and tiring that would be. Whereas if you let go of that identification with the breathing mechanism and just allow it to breathe itself, allow the breath to come and go on its own. Suddenly you stop thinking about it, you stop identifying with it, and it happens perfectly. In fact, better than if you try to control it. It's kind of like, that experience of getting really self-conscious walking on the street. And at some point you kind of, if you feel like people are watching, or if you can relate to that, and at some point you try to control how you walk to the point of forgetting how to walk almost. Whereas when you're not thinking about it, you're just I don't know, listening to music, walking down the street, you're in flow. It happens spontaneously, effortlessly, and beautifully without any need to control or to tense up or to care about any sort of outcome. So I'm curious about your experience, if you have more examples that might be illustrative of what we're talking about here, and I'll talk to you in the next video.